The emergency klaxon screamed through the Wanderer's dream. As Marcus Kane fought with the failing controls, sparks erupted from the navigation console while the ship's hull groaned. Under atmospheric pressure it was never designed to handle. Through the view screen, an alien world rushed toward him, all crystalline spires and floating gardens that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. "Come on, you piece of junk," Marcus muttered, his calloused hands dancing. Across controls, he'd modified himself for his less-than-legal cargo runs. The ship responded with another violent shudder and a sound like tearing metal. The crash was inevitable. Marcus had known it the moment the Galactic Patrol's surprise inspection had forced him into that emergency jump. No time to calculate coordinates. No time to check fuel reserves, just pure desperation and a prayer to whatever gods protected. Smugglers and con artists. The impact sent him flying against his restraints, and then everything went black. Marcus awoke to the sound of melodic voices and the scent of something like lavender mixed with ozone. His head throbbed, and when he tried to move, every muscle protested. Through blurred vision, he saw figures gathered around him, humanoid but clearly not human. Their skin held subtle iridescent qualities, shifting between pale blues and soft greens in the alien sunlight. "He's awakening," said one of the figures, a male with gentle features and skin that reminded Marcus of sea foam. "Are you injured, traveler?" Marcus tested his limbs carefully. Bruised, definitely. Possibly a mild concussion, but nothing seemed broken. "I'm alive," he croaked, then cleared his throat. "Which is more than I expected. I am Zephyr of the port authority," the seafoam-skinned alien continued. "Your vessel suffered catastrophic failure during atmospheric entry. We witnessed the crash and came immediately to assist. Port authority." Marcus's mind sharpened despite his injuries. That meant officials, questions, documentation, all things that could be problematic for someone whose cargo hold contained enough contraband to earn him a decade in a Federation prison. "My ship," Marcus said, struggling to sit up. "Is it destroyed?" "I'm afraid," Zephyr replied with what seemed like genuine sympathy. "The impact and subsequent fire consumed most of the vessel. We were fortunate to extract you before the fuel cells ruptured completely." Relief and panic warred in Marcus's chest. Relief that the evidence of his smuggling operation had been literally incinerated. Panic that he was now stranded on an unknown world with nothing but the clothes on his back and whatever story he could fabricate. "Where exactly am I?" Marcus asked, accepting Zephyr's offered hand to stand. "Viridia." "In the Sapphire sector," Zephyr answered. "A peaceful world, perhaps not. What someone of your experience is accustomed to." Something in the alien's tone made Marcus pause. "My experience. Forgive me," Zephyr said, his iridescent skin shifting to a slightly deeper blue. "Your vessel's configuration and the defensive modifications we observed before the fire suggest you're involved in dangerous work, possibly military or security related." Marcus's mind raced. The alien was making assumptions based on his ship's appearance, assumptions that could work in his favor on most worlds. Letting people think he was some kind of operative or military contractor had opened doors and loosened purse strings. "Something like that," Marcus replied carefully. "Testing the waters. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details." Zephyr nodded with immediate understanding. "Of course, classified operations. We respect such necessities." Another figure approached, a female with skin like polished silver and elaborate braided hair that seemed to move of its own accord. Her bearing suggested authority. "I am Captain Naya, coordinator of emergency services," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that Marcus found oddly soothing. "We've prepared temporary accommodations for you while we arrange transport off-world." "That's very kind," Marcus said, though inwardly he was calculating. Transport off-world meant questions, documentation, background checks, all things that would expose him as Marcus Kane, wanted smuggler, rather than whatever mysterious operative they believed him to be. "Actually," he continued, "my mission here isn't complete. The crash was unexpected, but I can adapt." Captain Naya's silver features showed surprise. "You have business on Viridia?" "But we received no advance notice of any off-world operations." Marcus smiled, falling back on the confidence that had carried him through countless cons. The kind of work I do doesn't typically announce itself in advance. Discretion is essential. Both aliens nodded as if this made perfect sense. Marcus began to relax slightly. Whatever culture these beings came from, they seemed remarkably trusting. Then you'll need proper documentation and accommodations. Zephyr said, I can expedite temporary residency permits. No need to involve excessive bureaucracy, Marcus replied smoothly. I work better with minimal official attention. Again, they seemed to accept this without question. Marcus was beginning to suspect he'd landed on a world populated by the most gullible species in the galaxy. As they walked toward what appeared to be the city proper, Marcus marveled at the architecture. Buildings seemed to grow rather than be constructed, their surfaces rippling with the same iridescent quality as the alien skin. Floating platforms carried passengers between levels, while bioluminescent plants provided gentle illumination as the alien sun began to set. Your world is beautiful, Marcus said, and meant it. We are proud of Viridia. Captain Naya replied, our society values harmony, truth, and cooperation above all else. We've had little contact with off-worlders, but we believe in extending hospitality to those who come in peace. Truth. The word struck Marcus as oddly emphasized. An admirable philosophy. It's not merely philosophy, Zephyr explained as they entered what appeared to be a residential district. For Viridians, truth is a biological imperative. We are incapable of deliberate deception. Marcus nearly stumbled. Incapable. Our neural pathways simply don't support the cognitive processes required for intentional falsehood, Captain Naya confirmed. It's been a defining characteristic of our species for millennia. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. An entire species that couldn't lie. That meant they had no natural defenses against deception, no instinctive skepticism, no experience with duplicity. They would accept whatever he told them as absolute truth. He was a wolf among sheep, and they were inviting him to dinner. Fascinating, Marcus managed, his mind already spinning with possibilities. Must make for a very straightforward society, indeed. Zephyr agreed. We find the concept of deception that other species possess to be quite alien. Fortunately, it's rarely an issue since most visitors to Viridia share our values. Marcus nodded, wearing his most trustworthy expression while mentally calculating the fortune he could accumulate on a world where no one could conceive of being lied to. As they reached his temporary quarters, an elegant dwelling that overlooked the city's central plaza, Marcus thanked his hosts with practiced sincerity. Rest well, Captain Naya said. Tomorrow we can discuss how best to assist with your mission. Alone at last, Marcus stepped onto the dwelling's balcony and looked out over the city of trusting, wealthy, impossibly naive aliens. The crashed ship that had brought him here was nothing but cooling metal now, but perhaps that was fate. After all, he'd just discovered the perfect world for a con artist. 3 weeks on Viridia had transformed Marcus Kane from a stranded smuggler into the most sought-after consultant in the capital city. His fabricated identity as a strategic security advisor had opened doors he never could have imagined, and the Viridians' complete inability to detect deception made every lie feel like taking candy from trusting children. Marcus adjusted his newly acquired formal wear, a flowing jacket of adaptive fabric that shifted between deep blue and silver as he approached the Grand Conservatory. Tonight's gathering represented the pinnacle of Viridian high society, and he'd managed to secure an invitation through a carefully constructed story about needing to assess cultural security vulnerabilities for his mysterious off-world clients. The conservatory itself was a marvel of bioarchitecture, its walls composed of living crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Inside, the elite of Viridia mingled beneath a canopy of flowering vines that released a subtle, intoxicating fragrance into the air. Advisor Kane called a familiar voice. Marcus turned to see Zephyr approaching, his seafoam skin particularly lustrous in the evening light. I'm pleased you could attend. There are several individuals who've expressed interest in your expertise. Always happy to help, Marcus replied, his practiced smile radiating confidence. Over the past weeks, he'd consulted on everything from residential security systems to corporate data protection, charging premium rates for advice that was mostly common sense dressed up in technical jargon. "Permit me to introduce someone special," Zephyr continued, gesturing toward a figure near the central fountain, Celeste of House Luminara. Marcus's breath caught. The woman approaching them was stunning even by the already impressive standards of Viridian beauty. Her skin held the deep blue-green of ocean depths, and her hair cascaded in waves of silver white that seemed to move with its own current. She wore a gown that appeared to be woven from starlight itself, and when she smiled, Marcus felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with his usual predatory calculations. "Advisor Kane," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species, but with an additional warmth that made his pulse quicken. "I've heard fascinating things about your work. Celeste is one of our most prominent cultural patrons," Zephyr explained. Her family's foundation supports artistic and technological development throughout the sector. Translation: she was wealthy beyond measure. Marcus should have been calculating angles of approach, identifying vulnerabilities to exploit. Instead, he found himself genuinely tongue-tied by her presence. "The pleasure is entirely mine," Marcus managed, taking her offered hand. The brief contact sent an unexpected current through him. "I'm always interested in meeting someone who appreciates the finer things." "Your reputation precedes you," Celeste said, her luminous eyes studying him with evident interest. "They say you've prevented 3 major security breaches since arriving on Viridia." Marcus had indeed prevented several security breaches by creating minor, easily solved problems, and then dramatically resolving them for substantial fees. The Viridians' gratitude had been both profitable and ego-stroking. "Just doing my job," he replied with practiced modesty. "Though I must say, Viridia's natural harmony makes my work quite pleasant." A new voice interrupted their conversation. "Sister, you didn't mention you were speaking with the famous off-world advisor." Marcus turned to see a male Viridian approaching with measured steps. His skin was a shade darker than Celeste's, and his expression held a coolness that contrasted sharply with the general warmth Marcus had come to expect from the locals. "Orion," Celeste said, her tone carrying a note of gentle reproach. "May I present Advisor Kane?" "Marcus, this is my brother Orion." Orion's handshake was firm, perhaps deliberately so. "I've been curious about your background, Advisor. Your rival coincided with several unusual occurrences." "Orion," Celeste said more sharply, "our guest is here to enjoy the evening, not endure interrogation." Marcus sensed undercurrents he didn't fully understand. Unlike his sister and most other Viridians, Orion seemed naturally suspicious or, at least, protective. This could be problematic. "Questions are natural," Marcus said smoothly. "My work often raises curiosity. Unfortunately, client confidentiality limits what I can discuss." "Of course," Orion replied, though his tone suggested this explanation didn't entirely satisfy him. "Perhaps we might speak privately later. I'd be interested in your perspective on certain security matters." Before Marcus could respond, Celeste placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Would you care to see the conservatory's private gardens? They're particularly beautiful under the evening stars." Marcus recognized both an escape route and an opportunity. "I'd be honored." As they walked away from Orion's watchful gaze, Celeste led him through an archway into a more intimate garden space. Bioluminescent flowers provided soft illumination, while the sound of flowing water created a peaceful backdrop. "I apologize for my brother's intensity," Celeste said, settling onto a bench beside a small waterfall. "He's been protective since our parents passed." "Family loyalty is admirable," Marcus replied, sitting beside her. The proximity made him acutely aware of her presence, the subtle warmth of her skin, the way starlight seemed to gather in her hair. "Tell me about your travels," she said, turning to face him fully. "It must be exciting, moving between worlds, solving complex problems." Marcus launched into a carefully crafted tale of his supposed adventures, diplomatic crises averted, criminal organizations dismantled, ancient artifacts recovered from dangerous ruins. Each story was designed to impress while remaining vague enough to avoid verification. But as he spoke, watching Celeste's reactions, something unexpected happened. Her genuine fascination, her trust, the way she looked at him as if he truly were the hero he was pretending to be. It stirred feelings he'd thought buried long ago. "You're remarkable," she said softly when he finished describing a fictional rescue mission. "To dedicate your life to protecting others, to face such dangers, for the greater good. It's not always as noble as it sounds," Marcus found himself saying, surprising himself with the honesty. "Sometimes the motivations are more complicated." Celeste leaned closer, her hand finding his. "That's what makes it meaningful. Anyone can be heroic when it's easy. True courage comes from doing the right thing despite complications." Marcus looked into her luminous eyes and felt something crack inside his carefully constructed emotional armor. When was the last time someone had looked at him with such genuine admiration? When had anyone believed he was capable of actual goodness? "Celeste," he began, then stopped, unsure what he'd intended to say. "Yes," she prompted, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Marcus found himself leaning toward her, drawn by something deeper than physical attraction. For a heartbeat, he forgot about cons and angles and profit margins. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft, tentative, and absolutely devastating to Marcus's emotional equilibrium when they separated. Celeste's expression held wonder and something that looked remarkably like affection. "I should return you to the gathering," Marcus said, though the last thing he wanted was to share her attention with others. "Perhaps," she agreed, though she made no move to rise. "Or perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere more private." The invitation was clear, and Marcus felt his pulse accelerate. But as they stood to leave, he caught sight of Orion, watching them from the archway, his expression unreadable. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, taking her hand. "I'd like to show you something special. I'll look forward to it," Celeste replied, her smile radiant. As Marcus escorted her back to the main gathering, his mind raced with conflicting thoughts. This was supposed to be a simple con: identify wealthy marks, extract maximum profit, disappear before consequences arrived. But Celeste was complicating everything with her genuine warmth, her trust, her inexplicable faith in his fabricated nobility. For the first time since arriving on Viridia, Marcus Kane found himself wondering if perhaps the most dangerous person on this world of truth-tellers wasn't him, but the woman who was making him want to become the hero she believed him to be. Marcus stood on the observation deck of his luxurious new apartment, watching Viridia's twin moons cast their ethereal glow across the city below. 2 months had transformed him from a crashed smuggler into one of the planet's most celebrated consultants. His fabricated reputation had earned him contracts worth more than he'd made in 5 years of actual smuggling, and his relationship with Celeste had blossomed into something that felt dangerously close to genuine love. The soft chime of his door announced an unexpected visitor. Marcus checked the time, well past the hour when most Viridians retired for their meditative sleep cycles. He activated the viewing panel and frowned at the unfamiliar figure standing in his hallway. The visitor was clearly Viridian, but unlike any he'd encountered, where most of the species displayed the typical iridescent skin tones. This individual's complexion was a deep, rich amber that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her attire was practical rather than decorative, a simple tunic and pants in earth tones that marked her as someone who valued function over form. Marcus opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you, Professor Indira Vashan?" she said, her voice carrying none of the musical quality he'd grown accustomed to among Viridians. It was direct, almost sharp. "Xenopsychologist at the University of Crystalline Peaks. I study behavioral patterns in non-Viridian species." Alarm bells rang in Marcus's mind, though he maintained his composed expression. "An interesting field, though I'm not sure why that brings you to my door so late." "Because you're the most interesting subject to arrive on Viridia in decades," Indira replied bluntly. "May I come in? I have questions about human behavioral psychology that only you can answer." Marcus stepped aside, gesturing her into his apartment. The space had been furnished with the finest Viridian craftsmanship furniture that responded to touch, walls that displayed gentle patterns of moving light, and a collection of artifacts he'd convinced various clients to donate for his services. Indira's Amber eyes swept the room with analytical precision. Impressive accumulation of wealth for someone who's been here such a short time. I provide valuable services, Marcus replied carefully. Viridians are generous in their compensation. Indeed they are, Indira agreed, settling into a chair. That molded itself to her form, especially when they believe they're dealing with a genuine off-world security expert. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Marcus poured himself a glass of Viridian crystal wine, using the action to buy time while his mind raced through possible responses. I'm not sure I understand your implication, he said finally. No implication, observation. Indira pulled out a small device that projected holographic displays into the air between them. I've been studying you since your arrival, Marcus Kane. The use of his real name hit like a physical blow. Though Marcus managed to keep his expression neutral, I think you're mistaken about something, am I? The holographs showed images of his crashed ship, security footage from various locations around the city, and what appeared to be detailed behavioral analysis charts. Your vessel's configuration matched no known civilian or military design. The modifications were consistent with smuggling operations. Marcus sipped his wine, buying time. Creative speculation, your movement patterns, speech rhythms, and micro-expressions are fascinating, Indira continued as if he hadn't spoken. Humans are the only species I've studied that can maintain complex deceptions without significant physiological stress markers. And what exactly do you think I'm deceiving people about? Indira leaned forward, her amber eyes intense. Everything, your background, your expertise, your purpose here. You're not a security consultant. You're what humans call a confidence artist. The accusation hung in the air between them. Marcus set down his glass and studied this unexpected threat. Unlike every other Viridian he'd encountered, Indira seemed immune to his usual charm and misdirection. That's quite a theory, he said. Do you have any proof? I'm gathering evidence, Indira replied. But proof isn't my primary interest. I'm more curious about the psychological mechanisms that allow humans to sustain such elaborate deceptions. And if your theory were correct, what would you do with such information? That depends, Indira said, deactivating her display device. On what I discover about your ultimate intentions. Marcus felt the conversation shifting into territory he could potentially navigate. You sound like someone open to academic collaboration. You're suggesting I become complicit in your deception. I'm suggesting that perhaps we could both benefit from a better understanding of human psychology and action. Indira was quiet. For a long moment, her amber features thoughtful. You're attempting to manipulate me now, offering me something I want research data in exchange for my silence. Is it working? Marcus asked with a slight smile. To his surprise, Indira laughed, a sound entirely different from the musical quality of other Viridian vocalizations. It was sharp, almost bark-like, but genuine. You're more fascinating than I initially calculated, she said. Most humans would either deny everything or attempt to intimidate me. You're exploring whether I can be corrupted, can you? That's the interesting question, isn't it? Indira stood, moving to the window overlooking the city. My species' inability to lie extends to self-deception. I can't pretend to myself that what you're doing isn't harmful to my people. Marcus joined her at the window. And yet you haven't reported me to the authorities, because I want to understand how this ends. Indira replied. Will you take everything you can and disappear? Will you be caught and face consequences, or? She turned to look at him directly. Will you discover something here that changes your fundamental nature? What makes you think the third option is possible, Celeste? Indira said simply. Your behavioral patterns change significantly when you're with her. Stress markers decrease. Deceptive tells diminish. Emotional responses appear more authentic. Marcus felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with his criminal activities. You've been watching us together. I observe everything. It's my nature. Indira moved back toward the door. You care for her, despite yourself. The question is whether that caring will prove stronger than your acquisitive instincts. And if it doesn't, then I'll ensure the appropriate authorities learn about your true nature. Indira said matter-of-factly. But if it does, she paused. At the door, perhaps we'll both learn something valuable about the human capacity for change. After she left, Marcus stood alone in his luxurious apartment, feeling less secure than he had since arriving on Viridia. Indira represented a threat unlike any he'd previously encountered, not because she could expose him, but because she saw through him so completely. His communication device chimed with a message from Celeste, asking if he'd like to join her for a sunrise viewing from the city's highest spire. As he read her words, filled with warmth and genuine affection, Marcus realized that Indira's analysis was uncomfortably accurate. He was changing, and he wasn't sure if that was wonderful or terrifying. The next morning found Marcus and Celeste standing on the Aurora Spire's observation platform. As Viridia's twin suns painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, Celeste pressed close to him, her presence warming him more than the ascending sunlight. "I have something to tell you," she said, her voice carrying a note of nervous excitement. "What is it?" Marcus asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. In his experience, when someone said they had something to tell him, it usually complicated everything. "My family's foundation is hosting a major cultural summit next month," Celeste explained. "Representatives from across the sector will attend, including delegates from the Galactic Federation." Marcus's blood went cold. Federation delegates meant background checks, identification verification, and questions he couldn't answer. "That sounds significant. I want you to be my official escort," Celeste continued, her luminous eyes bright with anticipation. "It would mean so much to have you by my side for such an important event." Looking into her trusting face, Marcus felt the weight of every lie he'd told, every deception he'd woven. Somewhere in the city below, Indira was probably recording his behavioral responses to this moment, and somewhere in his chest, something that felt remarkably like a conscience was making itself known. "For the first time in years, Celeste," he began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "Is something wrong?" she asked, concern replacing excitement in her expression. Marcus looked out over the city where he'd built his most successful con, at the woman who'd somehow become more important than any score, and realized that for the first time in his adult life, he genuinely didn't know what he was going to do next. The revelation about the cultural summit had left Marcus sleepless for 3 days. Federation delegates meant scrutiny he couldn't survive. Yet refusing Celeste's invitation would raise questions he couldn't answer. As he paced his apartment in the pre-dawn hours, his communication device chimed with an urgent message from an unexpected source. "Meet me at the Old Quarter Archives. Come alone." Ivy Indira's cryptic summons filled Marcus with unease, but curiosity won over caution. The Old Quarter represented Viridia's historical district, where ancient biostructures had been preserved in their original forms. The archives building looked like a massive tree trunk, its walls pulsing with faint bioluminescence that had dimmed with age. Marcus found Indira in a secluded reading alcove, surrounded by holographic displays showing what appeared to be government documents. Her amber skin looked even more unusual in the archive's subdued lighting. "You came," she said without looking up from her research. "Good. We have a problem, Marcus settled into the chair across from her, noting the tension in her posture. "Your presence on Viridia has attracted attention beyond my academic interest," Indira explained, finally meeting his eyes. "Minister Thane has been asking questions about you." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "Who is Minister Thane?" "Resource Allocation Coordinator for the planetary government. Officially, he manages distribution of Viridia's most valuable exports." Indira's expression darkened. "Unofficially, he's been skimming profits and selling access to restricted technologies. And this concerns me." How? Indira activated a new holographic display showing financial records. "Because he believes you're here to investigate his activities. Your fabricated background as a security consultant has convinced him. You're a Federation agent working undercover." Marcus studied the financial data, his smuggler's instincts recognizing the patterns of systematic theft. "These numbers suggest he's stolen millions of credits. Conservative estimate. But here's the interesting part." Indira highlighted specific transactions. "He's been moving stolen funds through the same financial networks you've been using for your consultancy fees." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "He thinks I'm connected to his operation. Worse, he thinks you're here to expose him." Indira leaned forward. which means he's planning to eliminate the threat you represent. How do you know all this? Because Minister Thane approached me yesterday. Indira replied grimly. He knows about my research into human behavioral patterns. He wants me to help him prove you're not who you claim to be. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. And what did you tell him? That I needed more time to complete my analysis. Indira's amber eyes held his steadily. I bought us perhaps a week before he expects a report. Us again. Why are you helping me? Because while you're a criminal, Thane is a traitor. Your deceptions have hurt individual Viridians' pride and wallets. His corruption threatens our entire planetary economy. Before Marcus could respond, another voice interrupted their conversation. How fascinating. A secret meeting between the mysterious off-world consultant and our reclusive Xenop psychologist. They turned to see a tall Viridian male approaching their alcove. His skin was pale silver, almost metallic, and his bearing radiated authority. Unlike most Viridians, his expression held no warmth, only calculating intelligence. Minister Thane, Indira said, her voice carefully neutral. An unexpected pleasure. Professor Vashon, Advisor Kane. Thane's gaze moved between them like a predator assessing threats. I trust your research is progressing well. Academic work requires thoroughness, Indira replied. Rushing leads to inaccurate conclusions. Indeed, time has a way of revealing truth, doesn't it? Thane's attention focused on Marcus. Tell me, advisor, what brings you to our humble archives? Marcus called upon every ounce of his considerable acting ability. Professor Vashon contacted me about some historical security protocols. Understanding past methodologies helps inform current strategies. How diligent of you both. Thane's tone suggested he believed none of it. I do hope your collaboration proves illuminating. After the minister departed, Marcus and Indira sat in tense silence until they were certain he was gone. He's accelerating his timeline, Indira observed. Finding us together will increase his suspicions. Then we need to move faster. Marcus surprised himself with the decision as he made it. Help me expose him. You're volunteering to risk everything. To stop a corrupt politician, I'm volunteering to save my own skin, Marcus replied. Though he wasn't entirely sure that was his only motivation. If Thane goes down, the heat comes off me. Indira studied him with her penetrating gaze. There's more to it than that. This is about Celeste. Marcus didn't deny it. Over the past weeks, his feelings for Celeste had grown beyond anything he'd experienced before. The thought of her learning about his deceptions from someone like Thane was unbearable. What do you need? Indira asked. Access to Thane's private files. Can your university credentials get us into government databases? Limited access, yes, but anything incriminating will be heavily protected. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. Leave the protection breaking to me. That's something I actually am an expert at. Their planning was interrupted by Marcus's communication device chimming with another message. This one was from Celeste, asking him to meet her at the Crystal Gardens for lunch. The timing couldn't have been worse, but refusing would raise questions he couldn't answer. Go, Indira said, reading his expression. Maintain your normal patterns. We'll meet tonight to begin our investigation. The Crystal Gardens represented one of Viridia's most beautiful spaces, a bioengineered park where crystalline formations grew alongside living plants, creating a landscape that shifted between mineral and organic beauty. Marcus found Celeste waiting by a fountain where liquid light flowed instead of water. You look troubled, she said, taking his arm as they walked deeper into the gardens. Is everything all right? Just work complications, Marcus replied, hating how easily the half-truth came. Nothing I can't handle. I know you can handle anything, Celeste said with complete confidence. It's one of the things I admire most about you. Her faith in him felt like a knife twisting in his chest. They found a secluded spot beneath a canopy of singing crystals formations that resonated with harmonic frequencies in response to sound. Marcus, Celeste began, her tone unusually serious. There's something I need to tell you. What is it? He asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. My friend Juno has been asking questions about your background, Celeste said reluctantly. She works in the Cultural Exchange Office and has been trying to verify your credentials with off-world agencies. Marcus felt his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. What did she find? Nothing yet. But Celeste's luminous eyes met his. She's concerned that your credentials can't be verified through normal channels. That's not unusual. For my line of work, Marcus said automatically, though the explanation felt hollow even to him. I know, Celeste replied quickly. I told her that classified operations require special discretion, but she's planning to contact the Federation directly. The Federation, the one organization that would immediately identify Marcus Kane as a wanted criminal. He had perhaps days before his entire fabricated identity collapsed. When? He asked. She's submitting the inquiry tomorrow. Celeste moved closer, her hand finding his. Marcus, I need you to know that whatever she discovers, it won't change how I feel about you. Looking into her trusting face, Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Here was someone offering him unconditional acceptance based on a complete lie. Someone who believed in a version of him that had never existed. Celeste, he began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. Whatever complications you're facing, we can handle them together, she said softly. That's what people do when they love each other. Love. The word hung between them like a bridge he desperately wanted to cross, but didn't dare trust, because crossing it would mean admitting that everything he'd built here was founded on deception, and that the woman who'd somehow become more important than any con in his life deserved better than a man who'd made lying his art form. But as he looked into Celeste's eyes, Marcus realized that for the first time in his life, he wanted to be worthy of someone's love more than he wanted to protect himself. The question was whether he'd have the chance to try.